With tax reform behind them, President Trump and Congress are now focusing on the budget. Will the new budget include funds for building a wall along the U.S. southern border? Remember, Donald Trump campaigned extensively on immigration and the wall, and he's not backed down as president.
If we get not only surveillance, but everything that goes along with surveillance, and ultimately we have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he, Nancy Pelosi, and the congressional Democrats are willing to work a deal on DACA. That's the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, the so-called Dreamers. But they won't give the president 1 cent for building a wall.
We're not for the wall. We'll never be for the wall. It's expensive. It's ineffective. It involves a lot of difficult eminent domain, taking people's property. And apparently, it's not being paid for by Mexico.
Schumer hasn't stooped to calling the president names, at least he hasn't done so publicly, but others on the extreme left have called President Trump a racist for wanting to construct a wall along the Mexican border. It seems whenever those on the left struggle with arguing the facts, they resort to name-calling. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed Trump's travel ban to move forward. Still, some have called the president an Islamophobe for proposing it. So let's just for a moment set aside race and all the rabid rhetoric and imagine that we're all members of one human race. Absent all the demagogic noise, we may just see that Trump's proposal makes sense to better protect America. The travel ban is against 8 countries. Yes, 5 of them are Islamic. Some people may ask, how come Saudi Arabia, home to the 9/11 terrorists, isn't on that list? Well, 9/11 was more than 16 years ago. Times have changed. So has the threat. The countries listed are those where potential terrorists now reside, those deemed by our intelligence agencies as posing the greatest threat to America at this time. And what about that wall? 8 prototypes have been built. Will it run along the entire U.S.-Mexico border? That's highly unlikely, despite what the president says, because it would cost hugely, billions and billions more than Donald Trump's personal fortune. Now, new Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen says erecting a wall really means putting in place a wall of tightened security along America's southern border. Walling will be built in some locations, especially those vulnerable to infiltration and breaches. Other areas will have fencing, motion sensors, cameras, maybe even drone surveillance, and of course, more people. Additional Border Patrol agents will be added. So the effort is not racist at all. It's protecting this country from M13 gangs who run drugs and guns across the border and spread violence in at least 42 American states. Tightened security is needed to better protect the country from terrorist infiltrators and other criminals. Now, most Americans lock their doors at night to keep unwanted guests out. When someone knocks or rings your doorbell, do you open the door without checking who it is? Don't you ask who is there, what they want? You don't just let anyone in to trash your house, do you? Well, it's the same with the U.S. border. It makes sense to implement tighter border controls, stricter vetting of people coming from countries of concern, visitors and immigrants who may pose a security threat. Now, that approach has nothing to do with DACA and the Dreamers, and to me, it's a separate issue, one for another commentary. In the meantime, we as Christians need to take the lead to advance reasoned immigration and security reforms. Yes, we are a nation that believes in the rule of law, but whether they're here legally or illegally, immigrants must still be treated with dignity and respect. We must have discernment and the wisdom of Solomon about who we let in when they knock on that American door. In Matthew 10:16, we're told, we are like sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Yes, America could use a little reasoned wisdom right now, but let's be careful not to lose our innocence and compassion for other people. Well, that's it from the Global Lane this week. Catch us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes. And until next time, be blessed.